when
Free.
you,
Free.
for unincarcerated persons. When you look at the total population, it's just over 17, as you mentioned.
The
There
sign says 17.5.
there are 2 prisons in the city limits
And a jail.
and a jail, and they're estimated to be approximately 10,000 people in those prisons. And the reason for the differential is at the time of the census, a number of those individuals are out on camps in other areas.
About 22,000.
About almost 2,000, and so that's where the differential comes. The sign would normally say 19,000,
And then you also have another couple thousand.
and then I won't speak to the county numbers, but that's a similar, once you include the federal prison along with the 2 state prisons and the jail, it's just over, I think it's 11 or 12,000.
So you take 30.
Whatever you say.
You're saying 37,000, minus out that 11 or 12,000, and our county general population is about 25,000.
We'll get that to you.
Right, the idea being that in counties where there's a small,
Thank
there's a
you.
lower population number, the percentages have a significantly greater impact. And if in Lassen County, 78% of your households are underserved, 78% of 23,000 is maybe 18,000 people don't have access.
And when you add in the prison population not being underserved, our numbers are really impressive.
Right, well, that's a social.
And when they block out the cell service at the prison, that will make a lot of people have no more access to cell service, so.
That's happening.
A couple of things, Kathy, if I could, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but let the audience participate as well. From the county, what do you need? Now, you've got a draft out, we haven't commented yet, probably.
I would,
you like us to comment on
a
the
point person that I can communicate directly with to update it, to verify it, to, to revise it so that the numbers actually reflect the work that you will have done internally.
Okay.
Now, it's not
Julie, you
critical.
want to, we'll take note of that, but we need a point person for that. We'll get Marty, we'll let our CEO.
I mean, a quick phone call, email with Jared can follow up on the numbers that he
Sure,
just mentioned for the city of Susanville.
I would
Same.
say the first people would be Maury from the county planning department, and probably Jared would be, or Craig in his office could be his point.
Well, we'll let Marty,
But I'd recommend that you CC any communications with Martin Nichols, the CAO.
is there a deadline on that draft?
It's already
I
been
mean, sooner the
submitted.
better, obviously, but.
The game plan for the remaining
Yes,
portion
go
of
ahead.
this calendar year is that I've met my deliverables per our work plan by putting together a draft concept for all the counties and presenting it to the counties. Getting your feedback and incorporating into those documents would be really fabulous for the remaining portion of this calendar year, sometime in the next 6 months. Also in the next 6 months, if the Golden Bear infrastructure application is in fact approved, which is now at a $91 million grant basket, it's the second largest in the history of the state of California for telecommunications infrastructure, and we've already paid into it, by the way, so it's not like you're being asked to pay more for it, that I'm going to be coming back and talking to as many people as I can encourage to communicate with me to determine what the adoption programs are that need to be developed. There are service providers offering high-speed internet service, but is the population satisfied with it? Is it affordable? Is it reasonable? Is it reliable? Those are the kind of questions that I need to get answers to, and then on a community level, figure out what we can deliver to the service provider, in this case, Frontier. The second piece of that is, if Golden Bear is not approved, for whatever reason, if it's not approved, my adoption plans for the remaining portion of this calendar year will be scrapped entirely, and my Geographic Information Center team and I are going to do what we're calling ground truth mapping, which literally means identifying on the map with a lat-long coordinate and a street segment specific address what the type of services that's available at that specific address. Compare that information with the actual advertised service that has been submitted to the state by all the service providers per the NTIA requests. Meaning that 6 to 9 months, a year from now, we'll probably have a significantly more accurate depiction of what really does exist.
Jim, you got a question?
Yeah, I have another question, and I appreciate, I just appreciate your intensity.
Oh, I know. Enthusiasm is,
But, when we talk about serving
contagious, I
underserved
can
areas,
assure
the only problem I have with looking at your map is that you miss 2 significant population groups. I mean,
Which ones?
In terms of Lassen County.
Right.
Well, see right there where Lake Eleanor is on the border between Lassen and Plumas County?
Uh-huh.
Well, on the Lassen County side, we have Westwood and Clear Creek, which is, I think, the second largest community within Lassen County.
That's exactly why we need to have these conversations.
And just across the border is Chester, and the
Yes.
whole Lake Eleanor Basin is a very significant population center for Plumas County. And my question is, at what point do you run a lateral over to be able to accommodate? Because you're not going to be able to change your overall numbers until you add that link. And then up above, and this is going to be for Aaron. Now, I'm going to say he's not as big as Westwood is, but Big Valley Beaver, but you have Aden and Lookout and going down towards Bernie. But that area is, is probably, I mean, we got close to 15%, 10% of the county population lives up in that area. Now, when you go up, like you do the backbone there on 395, there's a small handful of population, that's a fairly under, so if you move that line over, let's say to 139 and went up, you would catch a lot more people than you would be if you go up 395.
It's
I mean,
expensive, because there's no infrastructure that we could actually connect to. Up here, we've had conversations with Lassen Land Rails and Trust to be able to take advantage of the
On the
poles
rail,
that run
yeah.
along the
Right.
railroad. Now, the other point to that, the very first draft of this entire concept plan, we came out of Susanville, I don't know what the actual road is, we cut down this way to connect over here into Paradise and Chico to create a smaller
loop, yeah.
redundant loop. But this is a really ugly build. Bob Marshall of Plumas Sierra pretty much said, you have fun with that mountain.
It may be to the south of Lake Eleanor, but at least going over to Lake Eleanor, to the Westwood Lake Eleanor area, I don't think that's an ugly build, because you got Highway 36. And,
Eventually.
and
In the
Frontier-
meantime,
and Frontier
but there's
Service.
nothing to connect to, which means we have to do a phase one. And if we get phase one completed, I guarantee you this group is not gonna go away
Well,
anytime
make a
soon.
note for your file that if you expect to have any significant impact on changing the numbers in Lassen County, you need to get over there, because there are people over there. And also Eagle Lake at the north end up there, there's about 5% of the population kind of lives in Eagle Lake area.
Hopefully we're gonna have an opportunity to add all these dynamics, because you're right, I mean, over on the map on the right, Clear Creek is identified and yet not Chester.
Then what I wanna do is a follow-up in the next, I don't
Right.
know, month or two. Figure out a time that's convenient, either come up on a day when you're all already assembled, but then schedule a time where we can actually meet separate.
That would be good.
And just, 6 or 7 of us sit down at a drawing table. That would be great. Okay.
And I would have one quick question on your map on the right. Plumas Sierra is going to the community of Burlock, is that correct?
My understanding is that, I'm sorry, that their hearing point comes out of Reno and they come
Yeah,
all
but
the way up to
on the
Susanville.
right-hand map, for instance, if you were, it uses a different scale. If you go down to the community of Hurlong, which is to your right and lower, right there, Plumas Sierra is going to have a stub going to Hurlong, just for your
Berlin
information.
goes north.
That's a detail I
That's
don't know,
right.
but okay.
Okay, well, you can get that with Bob Marshall, so. Ground truthing, obviously, is something we would look forward to doing with you, Kathy. And
Well,
I
as
think-
with they know where their population is based on their electrical
Right.
services. They also know based on their electric consumers what their demand is being driven for access to high-speed services.
Right.
Plumas Sierra and the company that we've created to go after this application is known as Golden Bear Broadband. Well, Plumas Sierra and Golden Bear have talked about things like equitable fiber swaps, leasing circuits from each other.
So you're working with Plumas.
Yes, and Plumas Sierra really needs to finish this project before they engage in the second one. We work extremely well together, and I'm only halfway through a 3-year project. Anything.
If the board doesn't mind, I'll open it up to the audience quickly. I know we're running behind, and I guess I'm getting famous for it. But is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask Kathy a question or make a comment, or she can provide contact information and so on and so forth?
Or even make an argument. Test
Anybody?
me.
Just real quickly, and I apologize for my tardiness, you might have covered this. Is there any, the financial impact is, this is all grant driven, there's no matching funds in the future, there's no obligation by the county?
Correct. The matching funds that we have identified are from the private investment. Siskiyou Telephone Corporation is the primary project partner in this endeavor. And a group of foreign investors are putting up $12 million. There is no money required by the counties. Now, monies to build the last mile county backbones, That's a whole different argument, that's a whole different phase in the process. But there are 3 sources of federal funds that are being made available exclusively for rural remote broadband connectivity. The question is, does the county have a point person, a staff person who is willing to take on this project? Before I volunteer myself, because I've got 11 counties going at once, the idea being that there's money available for it. It's just a matter of somebody going after it.
When you talk about foreign investors, is it the Chinese, or where's the money coming from? And
This
what kind of control
particular-
are they gonna have?
What kind of what?
Huh?
I didn't hear the question, Jim. What kind of what?
What kind of control do they have if this is built? I mean,
Revelation.
What kind of control? They give us money, we spend it, we pay them back?
oh, is that what you're gonna have to pay them back? So they're just loaning you money?
It's a loan. It's a
Okay.
loan. It's a match loan, which is why this is such a tough project, because to make the loan payments on a monthly basis means we have to generate enough revenue off of the new connections, supposedly middle mile backhaul services sold to the last mile service providers. It's about enabling capacity for tomorrow. But because we've redone this 3 or 4 times, some of the more expensive routes have been stricken, reducing the overall cost of the grant required. It's like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle.
And who are the people running it?
It's a group known as Asia Pacific Group. They are Chinese investors, and they are in the process of finalizing what's known as a regional center in Mendocino County, which is literally the organization by and through which the U.S. government is allowing foreign investment into not just this country, but job creation in those specific regional centers. The crudest way I've ever heard it expressed is a cash for green card. And I think that truncates the purpose, the philosophy, and the actual end result. That yes, foreign investment does mean that they're buying their way into the country, but it's through the auspices of creating a job network in our country, so that it benefits both investors wanting to come to this country as well as bringing an infusion of capital. And you know what, quite frankly, when money is in really short supply, it's kind of nice to know that there's a cash cow waiting to pay it. And if it means all they have to do is pay it, we build it, and we've got services for 16 counties. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Eileen.
I read a couple articles that North Korea is involved with the Asian Pacific Group.
I don't know enough about it to comment.
I do.
What's the involvement?
They're in that group of investors.
As one of the investors?
Mhm.
So would be accepting money from nukes?
Mhm.
I'll find out.
Mhm.
Because until other people are going to put up with 12 million, it's not going to happen. Schools can't do it. The hospitals can't do it. Private residents are not going to do it, can't do it, and the incumbents are not going to do it. It may not happen this round, but this fight has only just begun because it's playing out at the state level.
So this bill is next Monday, Tuesday?
Monday, Tuesday.
SB,
7:40. You all know about Regional Council of Rural Counties. Paul Smith is our federal affairs lobbyist. He and I have been working very closely on this issue. We will both be attending both committee hearings all day Monday and all day Tuesday.
it'll be televised, so you can actually, if you go out to calchannel.com and use your broadband, you can actually live stream the thing into your, pretty cool. the way it is.
A 9-hour session, I would just as soon be there in person.
Well, yeah, but if you can't be there in person, you can at least take it in. And so it'd be interesting to listen to that debate in that committee, so I'll have to flag that, and if it works out, we'll try to tune in and watch it.
And back in March, we met with now Assembly Member Brian Dolly. Is it Doll or Dolly?
So,
Dally.
The Chinese.
Dally, thank you, the flat A. And after a 15-minute intense conversation, he said, I get it, yes, of course we'll support it, meaning not just the Golden Bear application, but also SB 740. The problem is, the people who vote on these particular bills, especially SB 740, none of the people in Northern California elected to represent these northern districts are actually on those committees.
Right.
So we've had to come at this from, a
But
six-pronged approach.
Brian is our representative, and if you've got him working for you, he don't think that he's not talking to those people on the committee and letting them know what he thinks.
Well, staff of Dan Lowe, Doug LaMalfa, and Jim Nielsen have all said that they will support it. I have not had direct communication with any one of them. Dennis Garten is going to be speaking to them in the next couple of days anyway. So, action items. I will follow up with you two individuals, and I'll get your names and email addresses off the website. I'm sure that's where they're located, right?
Yeah, it's not buffering.
And I'd ask for any communication if you
Right.
can.
CC
it
Marty?
to Marty.
Absolutely.
Kathy, your enthusiasm is infectious, as Jim noted earlier. We want to thank you very much for taking the time to come up. I think it's been very good. I know you've appeared before us before, and sometimes we have short memories, so it's good to remind us of our opportunities here. And
No,
look
it's
forward to
the
working with you.
cowboy pioneering spirit that keeps drawing me up. I just need to find a dude ranch where someone's willing to put me up for a week.
Oh, that might be arranged. Anyway, thank you very much for coming.
Now,
Appreciate it.
I would like to leave a copy with you. Let me know.
That'd be great. Thank you. We're gonna move on. Again, I apologize, we're running behind time, Jerry, I apologize, but hopefully that was informative to you.
It was.
Very good. Jerry Bird's here with us. This is our item D5, the 10:30 time certain Forest Service update. Thank you, Jerry. Good to see you.
Yep.
Short timer?
Yeah, right.
That's not good.
6 months.
You know we don't like it. 6 months? Good, we'll use you for the next 6 months.
I'm Jerry Bird, Forest Supervisor of the Lassen National Forest. First item that I'd like to talk about is last Monday, I attended the coordinating committee meeting. Supervisor Pyle and Wasik were there. It was a very informative meeting for me, hopefully for them. It was more of a, I think they characterized it as a meet and greet more than getting reeled down into substantive issues. We did talk a little bit about the access to the forest and set up this coming month that our transportation engineer, Heather Blevins, and our public services staff officer, Chris O'Brien, will accompany me to the meeting, and we'll get a little more deeper into it, because I believe Mr. Millar is also scheduled to be there. Correct me if I've got that wrong. Okay.
Jerry Bird, Larry Millar.
I believe that, so I can kind of talk about what we have been doing with the 5 primary counties that we work with. We have a little sliver of Modoc and Siskiyou County that the forest is in, but for the most part it's Shasta, Tehama, Butte, Loomis, and Lassen counties. And we've been working with those 5 county public works directors to look at across the forest rather than trying to come up with a plan of how we will adjust our travel management county by county. We really appreciate the counties working together with us on this so that we can come up with a proposed action which will look at changes to our travel management to allow greater OHV use or go with mixed use analysis on some of our level 3 roads if we don't downgrade the roads to a lower standard. So that's on the schedule for the July meeting, where we'll be talking more specifics about exactly, how this is going to work out into the future. Any questions or concerns on that one from the board?
As a site for the travel management, I don't know if this would be the best place, or we should take it up at the end under other, but, kind of paralleling that, and of course, this kind of is an outgrowth of that meeting that I was able to attend over in Chester the other day with Supervisor Teeter from Butte County, and invited Milligan and Tim Oliver joined. The 4 of us had a chance to meet with Chris Noda and the gentleman from the El Dorado Forest that was part of that review team or survey team. And there's two angles or 2 sides to, you might say, forest access and being able to engage the public lands for the recreation user. Obviously, the road system that you have, that's been probably consuming all the oxygen in the room in terms of the debate between level 2 and level 3 and whatever other levels that are out there in terms of accommodating the recreation, especially boomers that are retiring and wanting to be active and not ready to go play shuffleboard at the, at some center, the assisted living home. But in terms of just being out and about, in addition to that, we also have, other recreational interests, people who hike, people who bike, people who ride horses, snowmobiling, those kind of activities that transcend the public lands as well. And one of the things that has been really exciting has been part of the county's new comprehensive economic development strategy, the SINCE initiative that was finalized last fall, and now we're looking at the implementation of. We're seeing on the public lands that BLM manages, some of it is partly Forest Service land that you manage or contract with them to be able to manage as part of the Biz Johnson National Recreation Trail, and with the development of this new South Side Trail as a parallel alternative. And we, instead of just having the rail grade, which is easy for everybody to negotiate, there's different levels within a family, so trying to do something together as a family actually gives those who want to take the more challenging course can do that in sync with the family as a whole using the corridor. We see that as a tremendous opportunity to attract people to the area. And also I know the Forest Service has a lot of concern about people just taking off and freewheeling across the landscape, which may or may not have good consequences. So by giving them an area that can be designated or dedicated for their particular use, might be a way of kind of managing that kind of transgressions into areas that might have some other sensitivities. And one of the areas that's been identified as part of this initiative for developing kind of a trail network that could be utilized for economic purposes, for replacing the timber industry that has been pretty much wiped out by the regulatory process, is developing a trail network that comes off of Fredonia Summit up here, basically also paralleling the Biz Johnson Trail. There is a lot of popular use of using the Crazy Harry Gulch Road that comes off and connects over to Gomez, but kind of like going to the east of there, kind of following the ridge line, coming back towards Devil's Corral would be basically an extension of the South Side Trail, and they call it the Fredonia Pass Loop or network. And that's all on Forest Service land. It's not, there's no private ownership involved. It's not in any sort of critical management of habitat or whatever. It's just basically forest lands. It's, there are some road accesses to certain key points, but for the most part, we'd be talking about an off-road system. There's, with the crews that we've been using and the funding sources that we've been able to develop locally, we've basically built the South Side Trail, using, it hasn't cost the BLM anything in that respect to speak of. And the same thing would be true once the environmental stuff could be cleared and we have staff that would be willing and capable of handling that work for your staff. So in terms of burdening your in-house office to be able to do that, we've got resources. That's exactly how it worked with the BLM side of it.
Sure.
But what would be the prospect of getting maybe the Forest Service on board to allow and basically partner with the community, with BLM? If it becomes a question of ongoing management, we could actually designate maybe kind of a corridor that would be defined, and if the Forest Service didn't want to handle it directly, maybe contracting with BLM to have it be managed as part of the Biz Johnson recreation area. But the key is, in order for that reality to happen, we've got to have the Forest Service as being a primary partner at the table. And I know Ann Carlson, your ranger at the Eagle Lake office, is very enthusiastic about the idea. Chris O'Brien has attended several meetings with the LADC group and has expressed optimism about it. But obviously there's the bureaucracy that they have to live within, and as we pointed out with Chris, I know she passed it on to you, is why can't you guys be like BLM and make this kind of work, rather than having 10 reasons to do it, have 10 reasons not to do it. So what could we do as a board, as a community, as a county to maybe move that along and maybe develop that partnership? I mean, we'd even make this something that would we could even call it the Jerry Bird Trail. I mean,
Wouldn't be allowed.
I mean,
I'd have to die.
yeah, no, it won't be memorial. We can make it in honor of. But I'm just saying is, what could we do to maybe push that initiative along? Because that seems to be, one of the big sticking blocks. And the idea is that the Forest Services has not been responsive. And like I've said at the meetings, I said, well, how many times have you gone over and sat down and talked with people? The fact that Chris is there at the meetings, the fact that Ann's definitely engaged. You have this new ranger now coming into Chester. She seems like a very energetic and a forward-moving kind of a person, so I'm excited about maybe the opportunities we'll have as a county to work with her. But, you know, maybe as part of your legacy, before you leave, if we could get the ball rolling on defining, you know, maybe an appropriate management scheme that could accommodate everything and get that trail, because we're getting close to having the South Side Trail now completed, and that has created a lot of excitement, bringing a lot of people into the area to check out, and I think when it becomes well-known and people realize what the asset is, combined with the resources that have already been developed at Susanville Ranch Park, we got a lot of good things that are happening here, and I think the Forest Service can be like, instead of catching up to everybody else, you guys can help leading that parade, and I think it would be outstanding. So, and I think what it would do, if we were able to accomplish that, it would take some of the pressures that you're feeling off in these other areas that are generating these conflicts. Because for the most part, when you talk to the mountain bikers in particular, and I think even the horseback riders, they don't want to be out there riding on some of these forest roads that maybe create some of the user conflicts that are perceived. They would rather, they need to get there. You know, the recreationists like Sylvia represents with her rock group, you know, with the, you know, the motorized recreation, you know, they need to have that connectivity, but the non-motorized folks would just as soon not have to deal with it. And right now, they're basically being told that if you want to engage the forest, you have to do it on these roads. And they're going like, well, we don't want to go ride a forest road. We would like to be able to do, and that's where these other areas are attracted. So.
Yeah, the statement you made early on, Jim, is absolutely correct. For the first, oh gosh, and it's still going on, but at least the last 5 years, if not longer, our energies have been totally focused on dealing with the motorized recreation and the OHV issue and getting the travel management plan completed, getting that process done. And so we have, it wasn't a conscious decision, but we simply didn't have the staff or funding to pay adequate attention to the equestrian, hiker, and mountain biker. Now that we've moved and we can basically, working with the public works directors of the counties, come up with some way to accommodate some additional use by OHVs if it's appropriate and safe. But now is the time to start engaging the mountain bike community, the equestrians. We're building closer relations with backcountry horsemen. And backcountry horsemen have concerns about mixing mountain bikes and backcountry horses.
And I think some of these trails can be set up or developed so that they prefer one versus the other, because theoretically by law you can't make them totally exclusive, but you can make them preferred. And I think if you build enough facilities, you can create enough capacity where everybody has their little part that they do. It's kind of separate but equal, which is not really a popular public policy, but in many respects that's what you're kind of doing, and that's what BLM has done. I mean, they've got a couple OHV facilities out in the desert area, like out at Fort Sage, Turtle Mountain there, where they, you know, that's kind of really dedicated for the hardcore dirt bikers, and you know, and they're not out there competing with the mountain bikers or maybe the equestrians somewhere else, but they've got facilities set up that accommodate those needs.
And what you laid out is basically how we would meet this need is the local community meet with, like Ann Carlson and Kathleen Nelson, the new ranger, and she's a very avid biker.
Oh yeah, I was very impressed with her.
And so something that meets the needs of the mountain bike community is a bit more challenging. You know, the Biz is, as you said, it's a wonderful facility that we have from Westwood to here, but it is not very challenging, you know.
In places.
Right.
I would say Stan Bale